go through some acknowledgments and say thank you to everybody who has made this seminar series possible. Thank you to those of you that have showed up today, and thank you to those of you that are joining us through our YouTube channel. So hi there, YouTube audience. I'd also like to thank the College of Natural Resources especially for assisting us with the planning and for making this possible for us. And I'd like to thank my supervisor, director of the Wisconsin Center for Wildlife, Scott Hengstrom. He is an extension specialist in wildlife as well, and so everything that we do is somewhat geared towards wildlife extension and towards getting wildlife and natural resource information out to the public. So I'd like to thank him for his assistance with these efforts in planning this seminar series. I'd also like to thank Dr. Mike Rader, who helped suggest some speakers for us and helped us organize this to some extent as well. And so, also, this is something we like to do every time that we have a public gathering, including virtual gatherings. So we recognize the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point occupies lands of the Ho-Chunk and Menominee people. Please take a moment to acknowledge and honor the ancestral Ho-Chunk and Menominee land and the sacred land of all indigenous peoples. So with that, I wanted to plug the next dates in our seminar series. We have two remaining. April 20th, which is not a week from today, but 2 weeks from today, we have Greg Kasmierski, the chair of the Natural Resources Board, will be joining us with his talk. So please consider joining us. You can join us in-house here at TNR 170 at the UW-SP campus, or you can join us on our YouTube channel, and details will be on our website to follow. Also, on April 27th, we have John Greendeer, who is the Health and Wellness Coordinator for the Ho-Chunk Nation and also former president of the Ho-Chunk Nation. So please consider joining us for that as well on April 27th. And so with that, I'd like to invite Dr. Mike Rader, who is going to invite our speaker tonight. So sorry, before we begin, can you just test the microphone levels?
You want to test it or something? You good to go?
I think so.
All right, well, thanks everyone for joining us today. If you hunt or fish in Wisconsin, or maybe you've been to one of our great state parks, you might be a little bit aware of some of the things our Department of Natural Resources does to protect and enhance the natural resources in the state. Maybe you've been contacted or checked by a game warden in the field. Arguably the most recognizable face of the agency, maybe not the most welcome. I'm a little biased. I used to do a little bit of that work myself, but the DNR does a lot more than that, and a lot of behind the scenes work, and it is the lead state agency in terms of natural resource decision making and policy making, and we've got someone today who's in an excellent position to tell us a little bit more about how that works. So Dan Baumann is currently the Secretary's Director of the West Central Region out of Eau Claire, and he's got a wealth of experience in the DNR. Hope I got your bio right, Dan, but I believe started in 1992 in the dam safety and floodplain programs, and then in 1996 moved up to a water management engineer position. In the year 2000 became a basin leader for the Bad Axe and La Crosse Basin. Then in 2003 moved up to be a regional water leader, and since 2012 has been the DNR Secretary's Director of the West Central Region, which encompasses 19 counties. Portage County is one of those. Marathon County is one of those where I used to work. So I think I actually worked for Dan for at least 1 year in 2012 when I was a warden. But Dan also has a degree in civil and environmental engineering from UW-Madison and is a certified professional engineer. So without further ado, Dan, I'd like to thank you for coming, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. And I don't know that Mike worked for me. I probably worked for him, one of our finest in law enforcement. So thank you for the introduction. And thanks, Jennifer, and for Scott for the invite. I appreciate being here. The seminar series has been tremendous. I've listened to each one of them and learned something out of each one of them as well. So how all these different speakers fit together is really interesting to me, because I work with these folks every day, whether it's legislators or the Conservation Congress. Scott Walter, Dr. Walter used to work for us, and of course, Dr. Thomas was our chair of the Natural Resources Board and is always so inviting whenever DNR comes to the College of Natural Resources. So Thanks for the invitation. My talk today, I'm going to talk a little bit about our mission. And before I do that, I kind of got to back up and bring some of the other talks into where I'm at, because we all do fit together. If I can, let's see, I control this. My contact information, of course, will be on the recording. So I want to offer, I'm guessing students, everybody, students, yes, yes, yes. First of all, thank you for coming. I'm hopeful that you're thinking about a career with the Department of Natural Resources. I think we're a great organization. And I have my contact information up there that if you ever want to talk about DNR careers, what it's like to be an employee, 30 years for me, things to think about as you're wrapping up your career and moving on, please don't ever hesitate to reach out to me. I think any DNR staff person would be more than happy to talk to you about their journey of education and working for the department, and I surely am as well. All right, we gotta give you a little bit of background, some inside baseball, I call it, and I know Christine talked about this a little bit, that we are a cabinet agency, so if you're gonna come to work for us, know that our secretary and the secretary's office staff are appointed by the governor, and we're currently, when a new administration comes in, sometimes they like to shake things up and structure our agency in more efficient ways via their viewpoint. The current administration didn't do that when they came in, and this is the organizational structure, the division structure that we've had for at least the last 2 administrations. Each of these division administrators are appointed by the secretary and working with the governor. This administration kind of interviewed and hired from within. So all the division administrators in these divisions are DNR employees, or career employees. So they have a lot of history, a lot of background. They know where the bathroom is on day one, which sometimes when you get a new political appointee in leadership, it takes them a while to figure those things out. How the agency works, how big we are, how decisions are made, those kind of things. And if you find your career goal within one of those divisions, we really are quite diverse in what we do. Everything from public health when it comes to drinking water, to wolves, permitting deer seasons, to wastewater treatment, air management, you name it, there's a lot. So it's not only the ists, the biologists and the ecologists that we hire. Like me, I'm an engineer and I do structural and water stuff. We also have accountants and finance people, M&B, grants managers, you name it. So even if you're not a hard science, natural resources type of education, and this is probably more for the folks that might be watching on YouTube, don't rule us out as an opportunity to come work for us, because the journey has been great, and we really are a big family, and we're all trying to do our best to make each other successful while we're completing our mission. So that's kind of where we're at now, 2,600-ish full-time employees, and then the limited term employees. Any of you been LTEs with DNR? Yeah, great, thank you so much. I appreciate it. We need you. As you know, if you've worked for us, we need you. And things don't get done without that kind of support. Okay, just some civics, and we were talking a little bit, Jennifer, Mike, and I, about the civics of how decisions are made and what works and what doesn't work. DNR doesn't make any laws. We get our authority, and the laws are made by those we elect, the public will. So our public will is who we elect to represent us. Katrina Shanklin was on one of the first seminars, and she did a really good job of talking about how laws become, or how ideas become bills, become laws. And usually it's someone bringing it to the attention. It's not a bunch of legislators down in Madison saying, well, we should have a law about this or a law about that. It's really typically if someone's got bad water quality on their lake, or they're seeing wetlands being filled in, they say, well, this ain't right. We got to do something about this. And that's kind of the progression of public input to legislators, to them coming together, including stakeholders, and getting to a law, statute, is one way. There's also the federal government, Clean Water Act, Safe Drinking Water Act, Endangered Threatened Species Act, air management. Sometimes those laws are handed down from the federal level to the state level, and our legislators say, yep, we're going to pass those same laws. The federal government gives money to the state We hire biologists and engineers to administer the programs. So that's another way by which laws in Wisconsin and authority for the Department of Natural Resources happens. I will say that as I define this, and of course this is all my own thoughts, I'm not talking for anybody in the administration or within the department. It's just me with 30 years of working in different levels of the DNR and my thoughts on the topic today and the mission. So I think, in my opinion, the law really defines the what. What needs to be protected? What needs to be regulated? What needs to have some decision or approval granted by a state agency? So that's where the what comes from. And once we have that what, and we'll use wetlands as an example. We used to have 10 million acres of wetlands in Wisconsin. We're currently at about 5 million acres. Somewhere along the line, even before the Clean Water Act, the state of Wisconsin said we need to protect wetlands. So that was the what. They passed the statutes, and then they say to the DNR, tell us how. So we want wetlands protected. DNR, you develop a scope statement on the how we're going to do that, and include people that love wetlands, that hunt ducks, anybody who's got an interest in wetlands, industry, business, local governments. You get them all together, talk about how we're going to do that, how we're going to protect wetlands. And that's where administrative code comes out of. We draft it, we go to the Natural Resources Board, and I know NRB Chair Kazmersky is going to be here in 2 weeks, as Jennifer said. The department goes to the board and say, we need to go out on to scope. We need to scope this rule because the statute says we shall have rules. And we want to go out and engage the public. We talked about policy and how policy is made. Katrina talked about it, Dr. Thomas talked about it, and so did Tony Blattler, that it takes the public sharing their ideas to make a good law or a good administrative code. Otherwise, you get down the road so far and you might find out that you're actually impacting the resource that you're trying to enhance or save. So once we do that and have a rule packaged together, it comes back to the Natural Resources Board as a draft rule. If they pass it, it goes back to the legislature. And along the way, the public has numerous steps by which you can engage in those things. So the big ask for me, you can't get a group of people together without asking them to do something or get engaged, is just that, get engaged. If you're passionate about something, whether it's wildlife, bears, wolves, whatever, keep your ear attuned to those things, get engaged in the Conservation Congress, a local conservation organization, those kind of things, because it's important that in order for a good administrative code to be written out of a statute, we need a lot of input to identify the how we're going to protect bears. Everything from, I think there's some pieces in here in my notes that talked about everything from that the legislature gives us authority to do. We don't make these decisions, they come out of the legislature. Anything to do with money comes out of a statute. Whether it's a fine you pay for overbagging fish, the cost for a deer license, those kind of things, season dates and bag limits. So there's a big misperception out there that DNR makes all these laws. We're really, and I shared it earlier, we're a customer service agency that actually regulates our customer, which makes the work very challenging. So if you want to come work for us, be comfortable doing that, because it's all about education, sharing the why, and we're going to get into that. That's part of the mission statement. But these are things that inherently you would think DNR is making the laws. And that's really not the case. The money comes from the legislature, the authority comes from the legislature, and our board is part of that, which means you're all part of that because that's the public will. So get engaged. Let's see. Let me back up. I'm just going to share something else. I'm sure it'll come to me. I apologize. So what I'm talking about today is our mission. And for me, after 30 years, our mission statement is the why. So the statutes are the what. The administrative code is the how. And for us as employees that work under this mission, it's the why. Why do we do these things? 5 simple paragraphs. It's been the same mission since the mid-'80s. How many were born in the mid-'80s? There's one. 2, not very, a few. So we've been following this one mission. Oh, I know what I was going to say. Sorry, just need to back up because I found this funny. it seems like the misperception that DNR makes all the laws kind of leads to different acronyms for DNR. I've heard do no right, damn near Russia. I'm sure others have probably heard some similar type of phrases for DNR that maybe shouldn't be repeated on a camera that's being recorded. So, and that's just a testament of the time. A lack of education, a lack of understanding, and as DNR employees, one of our biggest parts of the mission, and we'll get to that part of the mission statement, is about the education and sharing with folks and engaging. So again, this to me is the why we do these things as a DNR employee. You get introduced to this as you come through onboarding when you're hired. You're given a copy of this. It seems to work. We've revisited it a couple times since the mid-'80s. No language has changed. It's been the same. Our vision has kind of changed with different administrations, and our values have changed a little bit, you know, because they want to fancy it up or make it their own. But our mission statement has remained to be the same, which is pretty impressive to me. And if you care at all about natural resources, you can probably find yourself somewhere in this mission statement. There's pieces and parts once you really dig into it and try to understand it, and that's what I'm going to try to do today, is let you in on some of the things, at least from my perspective, what I see in each one of these paragraphs. So if you are coming to work for us, and I hope you all do, this might be something to think about, either as you're going in for an interview or you're in your first tough challenge as a DNR employee or in front of someone in the public presenting something that maybe doesn't agree with your ideas. Some of this is our foundation, so it's the why for me. All right, this is the first segment of it. I won't read it to you, but it's interesting that I've done a lot of public hearings, a lot of public meetings, a lot of angry calls from people, landowners or project proponents, and they tend to believe this is the DNR's only mission. You know, you're not following your mission because the activity that you're getting ready to permit is going to not protect or enhance our air, land, and water. How can you say you're doing your job? Maybe you shouldn't be doing your job because this is your mission. Well, that's not our whole mission, and there's a lot behind this. It does have to go to our public trust. Public trust, as everybody probably knows, the natural resources of Wisconsin, air, land, and water, wildlife are held in trust for all citizens, and that is charged to the legislature through the Constitution and delegated to the department through administrative code. So we won't go back there, but to protect and enhance, you know, we're human. We're here on the landscape. We have an impact, and it's not always positive. We have wastewater treatment plants. We need to grow food. Central Wisconsin is a good example of just how much food can be grown in the right conditions. Well, that takes inputs. Some of those inputs can have impacts. We need petroleum. We mined a bunch of sand. There could be air impacts. We need power. There's stuff coming out of the stack. So it's really kind of a balance. And this first paragraph not only identifies that, yes, we're here to protect and enhance our natural resources and these public trust issues, but there's a balance there. And that's really, I think Katrina talked about it a little bit as well. That's how we get to passing laws, is that there's a balance. We take the impacts to all interests, and we come to some conclusion. Is it always right? No. If it was always right, we wouldn't have issues with our groundwater. We would never have, you know, harmful algal blooms. We wouldn't have threatened and endangered species. So sometimes it takes that balance, and we learn over time. We're still, my generation is cleaning up some of what were the right decisions at the right time from the 70s, and you'll all be doing that in the future because some of the decisions we're making today on permits and what rules and laws fit, we're going to learn as we go. So getting into the natural resources field, there's never going to be, the job is never done. So there will always be need for your smart expertise and engagement on continuing to solve these issues. Let's see if I hit all those. Yes, I think that's good. We'll go to the next one. So second, the one on the left is my daughter. The one on the right is a young lady that hunts in our deer camp, her first deer. So This next paragraph of our mission statement is healthy, sustainable environment, a full range of outdoor opportunities. And as you know, we do our best to do that. It was mentioned earlier, parks, forests, trails, clean rivers and streams, 15,000 lakes, 70-some thousand miles of streams, those kind of things. It's part of the DNR's mission of why we do these things is to provide a healthy and sustainable environment and outdoor activities. But we also, in balancing that, we have to permit those impacts that we just talked about. Whether it's wastewater discharge, structures, infrastructure is a big one. Roads have a huge impact, and that's where most of the 5 million acres, in my opinion, of wetlands went, is because we needed to have roads to get from place to place. And in order to put a road over a stream, you're probably going to impact that stream a little bit and the wetlands that are surrounding it. So with this comes a balance. It's not all one or the other. It's a give and take along the way. But really what we're after is the opportunities for all of you and for generations to come to get out, be able to get out and enjoy our natural resources, some of the best in the country, some of the best in the world. And if you're pursuing a profession in natural resources, I'm sure you are engaged in that already and something brought you here. Me, I grew up on the lower Wisconsin River in Muscadet, and spending time as a youth on that kind of drove my decision of where I wanted to work. And maybe that's your story as well. So as we look at being able to provide those outdoor recreational opportunities, everything from wildlife resources, harvest and observation, swimmable, boatable, hikeable, camping, biking, wildlife health issues. As you're probably hearing, we're having avian influenza right now is a big deal. CWD, of course, VHS and fish. This is all part of our mission of why we do administer the rules that we do, is to be able to do our best in this part of our mission is to provide that. Because if we weren't doing anything to try to get in front of CWD, avian influenza, VHS, water quality for a big one, we wouldn't be having the types of resources that we have for our public to get out and enjoy. And this is, the first one, the first segment about protect and enhance. That's usually what's thrown in front of me when folks say we aren't doing our job. And they kind of forget about this one because, as I said, growing food, generating power, those are things that require impacts and input of our natural resources. Pretty much if it isn't grown or mined, we wouldn't have it. I don't know where we get cool fabrics like micro suede, it doesn't grow itself, and you need a lot of inputs to get to something of this coolness. On the left is a hydropower plant, a big plant on the Chippewa River. Maybe in the mid to late 90s, there was a big push nationally. Dams have too much impact. They're stopping fish and critters and everything. The ones that we don't need, we really need to be working to remove. And nationwide, there was a big push to remove dams, and they removed quite a few. But dams have a role as well, as we're now getting into renewable energy. And there's a balance between the impact of the value of renewable energy and the impact it has on the resource. Have we done some things like fish passage and fish ladders, those kind of things? Yes. Are we ever going to get to every dam, which there's 2,500 plus in Wisconsin, having fish passage? We're never going to get there. And it's a waste of time to think we're going to get there. Much like eating an elephant, you take a bite at a time. And as opportunities arise to do fish passage or get dams out, we're all over doing that with partners. And it's really about partners. Some of the best partners we have are some of the folks that may be impacting the resource the most. Hydroelectric is a great partner for us. They do a ton of good work natural resources wise. Over my neck of the woods, it's Xcel Energy. They have a bunch of hydropower dams. Terrific organization to work with, very conscientious. Over history, they've donated thousands of acres of land for the public, and we still work with them today on some of those land use issues. On the right, and this is a big boom, this was the gold rush of 2011-ish. This was industrial sand mining. And the big challenge there was something new. We've had non-metallic mining in Wisconsin for 100 and some years. We have hundreds of non-metallic mines, but they're mostly for construction materials, gravel, sand for road building, those kind of things. And they're typically 40 acres, nothing huge. Well, in comes industrial sand mining, and it's thousands of acres. Are we set up to regulate that industry? Do we have to have new laws on the books? How do we work together with the industry, the local governments, state government, and federal government to make sure that they're not in here, say, polluting all the air with fugitive dust, contaminating groundwater with heavy metals, noise. A lot of this was, if you remember 2011 to 2015, 16, there was a lot of hand-wringing anxiety about what are we going to see here? Is it ever going to stop? They're fracking wells out west and they need all this sand. It was Wisconsin White, I think they called it. And we shot to 100 and some of these mines, a lot of them in West Central region, my geography. And it came down to sometimes one neighbor didn't have sand and was a farmer and was struggling to pay the bills. On the other side of the road used to be the same farmer. He's got industrial sand mine, people coming in and wanting his land, and became a millionaire overnight. So there became a lot of the neighbor issues, as you can imagine, and the one that wasn't benefiting economically and could choose to go somewhere else was not only not in the same economic situation, but then they were dealing with all the trucks and the noise and the light, and it changed the whole landscape. And we saw that quite frequently. Local town government challenged to put in zoning laws or conditional use permits. Lots of people showed up at these meetings, very angry, upset. What about the deer that were there? What about the forestry products, the fisheries? So if you're into any of those ologist type of profession or career goals, we drew on those specialists, scientists within the agency to come to the table and do that evaluation. Is groundwater going to be protected? Can we expect changes in water temperature on that trout stream because they have a discharge? So your work and your knowledge, your education comes into these things that pop up on occasion, like industrial sand mining. It ran for maybe 8-9 years. Price of a barrel of oil dropped significantly. They started finding local sources of sand that maybe weren't as effective, but they were a lot cheaper. The transportation back and forth was really the thing that hurt the industry. Some of them survived. Some of them went into making glass, silica for glass, other industrial products. But I think the volume of industrial sand being used for fracking petroleum mines right now is relatively low. As you saw, the price of a barrel of oil just went to 120 something. I think it gets economical, at least back then, when it reached about half of that. So I've not sensed any, but I've not been too tuned in as to whether some of those mines will open back up. One of the big pieces with this, and it's enjoy these resources in their work and leisure. The leisure I think we have figured out. The work thing is where we really kind of struggle, and that's the connection between regulatory requirements, permitting, approvals, to say the legislature and administrative code through statutes said, if you meet these criteria, DNR has to say yes. And that was really kind of a tough pill to swallow for some folks, because they thought that somewhere in there should be, if the neighbor doesn't like it, then the department should have the authority to say no. Well, that's not how it works. Our lane is pretty narrow. If we don't have authority to regulate something like public opinion, which we don't when we're doing permitting decisions or environmental analysis, it doesn't come into play. We can't say yes to something we don't have the authority to say yes to any more than we can say no to someone who meets all the criteria. And sometimes that's a real eye-opening experience for 300 people that are filling a room not wanting a CAFO to come into the town of Saratoga in Wood County. So you're going to be involved in those, but those are the ones that really kind of you look back on and say, okay, I learned something there. The next one's not going to be as challenging. I'm going to get there early. I'm going to start introducing myself. I'm going to grip and grin and kind of be part of it. And those are lessons you'll learn along the way. This tangent, sorry about that. But the work and leisure, and it's going to continue. That'll be something that we continue to struggle with because like sand mining, like confined animal feeding operations, those are things that society demands as we exist. We need to do things at a greater scale, faster, cheaper, and working through those things when they come up. I think we're well positioned in Wisconsin between the state agencies that are involved, the legislature, the governor's office, and the public specifically to address those things, get involved and say, here's what we're willing, here's what we think is the trade-off. Here's the consensus point in the environmental decision-making model, which you probably have all learned about and one that the department uses regularly in trying to gain consensus. Okay, and this is, again, much like Representative Shanklin talked about, I know Dr. Thomas, and for sure Scott Walter, Dr. Walter talked about, it's really this conversation that sets policy and moves the needle, brings people together. And this is just a picture of one of our past secretaries, Dan Meyer, sitting around listening to DNR folks at this point. This is in Eau Claire at a break room, hearing what issues are in front of them so he could get a better understanding of what the day-to-day struggles of DNR staff are. Typically, the secretary's out talking with the public, mostly, doing engagements like this. But Dan Meyer did a great job of getting together with staff to say, okay, what are you hearing? What do you think as an expert in your field, as someone educated in wolves or bear or wildlife ecology, those kind of things. So the conversations themselves are really how we get to solving those questions. The public involvement and the public will, again, that basic civics lesson, the public will is your will in who you elect when you vote, because those are the decision makers across the country, congressional as well as state legislators. Local also, they have a different focus and goals with local government than we do at the statewide level, but it takes everybody sitting down and, like Scott said, talking about what we agree on, and then let's work on the things that are more challenging. You know, how much air pollutants can be discharged, or how much wetland is it okay to impact without having to offset or buy credits, those kind of things. A lot of passionate people in Wisconsin, no doubt about it, and especially when it comes to natural resources. We hear from them often, and we're glad we do, because without them, the expert model really doesn't work. And I think that was back when we were called darn near Russia or do no right. We might have been in an era where we're using the expert model, that we did know what the problem was and we did know the solution, and if you would just go and do what we tell you, then it would solve it. That doesn't work. You got to kind of identify the problems together, think about how solutions fit into everybody's wheelhouse, and then what they can contribute to solving the problem overall. And that's been much more effective. It makes our job so much easier because we're a partner, we're engaged, instead of standing up there saying, this is it. Seldom was it, this is it. So, good approach there. And then I gotta apologize here. Do we have any forestry folks in the room? It's not Smokey the Bear. It's Smokey Bear. And I don't know how, I didn't create this photo. I pulled it out of an archive, but I've been corrected a couple times that never, it's not Smokey the Bear. It's Smokey Bear. So to the forestry folks, I apologize and correction right up front. But much like you'll likely hear from John Greendeer, who I'm really excited to tune into that seminar series, talk about making decisions today based on how the impacts may happen down the line in the future. And part of our mission here is to help not only educate and engage with our younger folks, our kids, students, to get them excited about natural resources, but to make them aware. Because some of them may never hunt or fish, but as long as they're aware of it and they understand it, I think that's half the battle. And much like back in my military days, You know, you could be a cook or a mechanic or a truck driver. At the end of the day, you were an infantryman. You know, they gave you boots and a weapon for a reason. And I think DNR is kind of the same way. We could be biologists, engineers, accountants. At the end of the day, we're all educators. And what our purpose is to educate folks so that they understand the why, our mission being the why, how that happens, and what we do affects them in that way. So we do a lot of school talks. You've probably seen us on campus, fairs, Lakes Conference. If you have any interest, the Lakes Conference is in Stevens Point. That's statewide, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. A lot of good talks going on over there. Everything from aquatic plants to water quality. I saw a loon exhibit. They're talking about loons and loon protection. So the department does a lot of that, sporting shows, and I think, well, it wasn't that long ago that Farm Tech Days was actually here in Portage County, I think. I went when it was here. We have it again this year in my region, and it's in Clark County. But great opportunities to sit down with people, answer their questions. We're offering a water sampling test again, a free one to check on nitrates. So just finding ways to engage our public, invite them in, talk about what their concerns are, so that when they go to the next time they have to engage on a natural resources issue, they're thinking about, well, that was a pretty good engagement I had with DNR. Maybe they aren't do no right or darn near Russia. Maybe they are just people like us that are passionate about something, have something to share. And Preston Cole, if he was talking to you today, he would stress that the service excellence part of DNR, it's a big focus of his. Customer service, service excellence, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that's kind of this part of our mission where we're out there trying to engage folks to understand. Because the department can't do this work alone. There's too much of it. And if any of you are engaged with outdoor or outside agencies or organizations, Pheasants Forever, conservation organizations, you'll find quickly that they do a lot of the work. They're out there, sweat equity, raising dollars, and those are partnerships that we value because the department and the department staff can't do it by ourselves. There's just not enough money. The legislature never give us enough people. And I remember that because at the Lakes Conference, I came from there to come here. The Citizens Monitoring Group is very active and continues to grow. So we have lots of citizen monitors out there. I know Snapshot, if you participate in that, Snapshot Wisconsin, I think we're up tens of hundreds of thousands of photos, trying to get an idea of what's going on out there on the environment, what's impacting and what's insightful for our customers, and how we can better engage you. And we're doing a lot with social media. We know that it took us a while to get there. We know that to connect to maybe Jen below me, you got to do more of that. You got to make it interesting. I think we actually have TikTok now too. So some of that will be out there and doing some of those videos, and you won't see me in the jacket, busting a move or anything while we're sampling for CWD, but who knows if that's what gets people to tune in and become participants. I think it's worth it. And a huge shout out to the College of Natural Resources, because I know we lean on you a lot. Student help, doing everything from work on the Little Plover River. That was a big push over there with forestry and fisheries, and tagging you for everything from manning headlapping stations in the past to collecting CWD samples. All great experience. Never hear a bad word from our folks. They're always excited when students from Stevens Point are asked to participate, and you folks always pick up the baton without question and do a great job. So thank you so much for that. So that's our mission. Here it is again, and I hope I was able to share with you that the why of, as an employee, if any of you are employees with Wisconsin DNR, whether it's Fish and Wildlife, Oregon, wherever you go, that you're engaged, you take a look at what their mission is, and I'm guessing it'd be awfully similar to this one that we've been using since the 80s. It really kind of defines why you're doing what you're doing. And it kind of links all you DNR, all the resource staff that I work anyway, it kind of makes that gel within the family to say we all are working under the same mission and we all want it to be successful, because if it's not successful, we know we're not performing to the public's will. And that's how and when you get involved, is through the public's will. I can't say enough about that. Let's see. So again, just to reiterate, the what, that's the statutes. The how is the administrative code, and our mission is the why. So as you're out there now being educated folks on DNR and how we fit into the big puzzle, you can share with folks that DNR really doesn't make laws. They are delegated and granted authority to actually administer those laws. And there's some things we don't have flexibility on. As Mike may be able to relate, we do have some discretionary enforcement on things. People make mistakes. Trains get derailed. There's spills that happen. We had a semi carrying lawn fertilizer go off the bridge, the city of Menominee, and down into the Red Cedar River. Those things happen. So there is some gray, but the gray is limited, and it usually comes after the fact. And how do we fix a problem versus how do we prevent it? And if we know how to prevent it and there's still impacts happening by actions, then we get into compliance, and that's a more challenging piece. So if you're going into law enforcement, it's really you're our ambassadors. You're out there every day. People notice you because, like me, you get to wear a spiffy uniform. Although these are not issued, you actually got to dig through Goodwill stores if you want a micro suede camouflage tuxedo blazer. All right. Now, questions are, you can have questions, but to me, I take these opportunities to get feedback. So if there's things from your point of view, because you're all out on the resource, you probably have more engagement with what's happening, social media, people of your age group, how you enjoy the resources. Maybe there's not enough parks, the parks are never clean, I see too many violations going on. I'm not only interested in your questions, but your feedback. And it doesn't have to be now, it doesn't have to be tonight, but if you have feedback or you have questions that you think about, and maybe this isn't the right arena for it, please don't ever hesitate to reach out to me, and let's have a conversation. I can either get you connected with the right people, I can do my best to answer the questions on my own, I can give you my own experience, lessons I've learned from doing the wrong thing, and there's been a lot of those as well. But that's the great thing about this organization is you can make mistakes and you can learn from them and you can still get a paycheck. So it's an encouraging place to work. I would open it for questions if there are questions. Anybody have one on anything I covered, anything natural resources, how maybe we fit into Scott Walters' talk or Dr. Thomas's talk or Tony Blattler, Katrina Shanklin's talks? Anything out there? Yes, sir.
Thanks, Dan, for your 30 years of
Yeah.
service. In that time, could you maybe talk about one of the issues where you feel like you or the DNR has had the most success, and then one where it's been the most challenging, or you feel like you haven't made as much progress as you feel you should?
Yeah, no, great question. And as I listen to these other seminars, if it's okay, Jennifer, I'll just repeat the question.
Yes, please.
Okay. The question was, over my 3 decades, can I share an example of where the department found success in solving a problem, and maybe where we've continued to have challenges in solving problems, right? The things that involve the greatest number of people, to me, are where we find the most success. So I would say the Knowles Nelson Stewardship Fund is one that is really a huge success, nothing like it out there that I'm aware of. And that took a lot of people saying, we need to protect these areas. These are the best of the best. Lots of people talked to lots of legislators. It's been in place a long time. It's stood the test of time, although it's had some nicks in it and gone up and down as far as funding. But the premise of it that the state needs to set aside dollars or have dollars available, not only for local units of government, which is a huge part of the program, non-government organizations, conservation trusts, land trusts, those kind of things, they get a set of that money. But the department's piece of that puzzle has shrunk over time. And that's just kind of the winds of politics, you know, who's ever got the most influence at the time. But it's still there, which is amazing to me. So a huge success, and one that I would find hard to find anybody that would say that isn't a huge success, and that came from the public. That's really where the best solutions, I think, and the ones that last the longest come from, is by that engagement. And now if you were to say, we're gonna end the stewardship program, people come out of the woodwork quickly. And that's been attempted before, or it's been talked about. I don't know that's been attempted, but it's been talked about. And that's what's the back and forth. So we continue to buy properties. If you've been on any state lands, they call them DNR properties, but they're really your properties. Adopt a wildlife area. I know this campus is big on that for Buena Vista. I know you work hard out there with Lisa Kardash and Aaron Grossman. I missed that work day. I was going to get out there and if nothing else, fix the chainsaws that helpers might destroy, but great opportunities there. Ones that we've tried to work on and haven't always been so successful and we're still trying on is water quality, you know. Humans are here, we have an impact. You know, if wastewater treatment plants treat the water, but if it was that clean, it would go right back into the drinking water supply, right? So, you know, there's a lot of work that goes into water quality monitoring to see what the assimilative capacity of the particular stream is. And we've learned a lot over time, and over time those limits continue to come down. But we haven't done very well with non-point source pollution. Everything from lawn fertilizers to ag to sludge from wastewater treatment plants, you name it. If we put it on the land in excess, it's got to go somewhere. So it's either going to go to groundwater or it's going to run off and go to surface water. And we just haven't got a great handle on that. I think the solution to that is much like how we got to success with Knowles Nelson, is that the public gets together, sits down, and I see that happening. Over the last 10 years, I see that more and more happening where the ag community says, I think we can solve this. We got good ideas. What do you think about X? Or we're just gonna go do it, you know? And you'll see a lot more over the last 5 years of cover crops, not plowing all the way up to the stream's edge, granting easements to come in and do stream bank stabilization and restoration. So I think it's happening over time. And much like the Clean Water Act fixes for discharge coming out of pipe, that took a long time and a lot of hand-wringing, and everybody thought it was going to cost too much. We're a pretty resilient society. We figured out how to do it, and it didn't break the bank. You know, municipalities are still treating wastewater, so is industry, so is business. So I think we can do it. And it's just going to take a lot of understanding, a lot less finger pointing, and I think we're moving past that. And legislators sitting down and talking with the industry, not so much the regulators. They come to us and say, well, what's it going to take? And can we ever get there? And that's a big question. In some areas, I don't know. And that's where anxiety for me lies. In 30 years, water quality has been a challenge since the day I started. And it's going to continue to be. That's what this generation is going to fix. Those are the problems that we created in my generation that this great generation in front of me is going to find the answer and the solution. Great question. Thank you. Yes, sir.
So Dan, you've been doing this for 30 years. Have you noticed any major changes, you know, in the way DNR does business or the relationship with the public or the legislature in those 30 years? You know, we started in the early 90s, and that's when I was in college.
Right.
You know, preparing students for, you know, the world as it exists now. I'm just curious what changes you might have noticed along the way, or if you have noticed them.
Yeah, great question, Mike. And the question was, have I noticed in my time at the DNR a change in how we work with different entities, whether it's the legislature, even our internally as well as the public? Is that fair?
And just what the DNR, you know, the way that DNR does business.
Yeah, and how DNR does business. You know, Christine talked about it a little bit about, we used to be an agency where the head of the agency was hired by the Natural Resources Board. And there's some positive things that go along with that. Also, there's some negatives that people would say led to the reason that we changed. Currently, as I mentioned, we're a cabinet agency. The governor appoints the secretary, and the governor and the secretary appoint all the other handful, 12 other appointees. And that's got some positives and some negatives as well. Some of those would probably be best, Mike, if we had a PBR somewhere and talked about. But I think it demonstrates that as we get new people in, with the governor's appointees, there's fresh ideas, there's fresh relationships that they bring, their experience, who they know, what successes they've had, what lessons they've learned, and that can fit really well into how we deal with the public, how we deal with conservation organizations, and through the last administration, especially how we deal with business. How we get a business state of mind when we're working on permits, reviews, approvals, those kind of things, because government doesn't always move at the speed of business. And we needed to do better, and I think we have. So we're kind of finding a better sweet spot in working with ag, industry, business, commercial, economic development, those kind of things. So it is kind of more of a hands up. Here's my cards. Let's start with our cards on the table and see what cards we have similar that we can make a good poker hand out of, instead of coming in with our cards closely guarded and say, okay, what do you want? Well, you can't have that. What else do you want? And that led, as you know, to a lot of animosity, a lot of distrust, and just not a great working relationship. So that's really been, I think, what I've found over time is that we're moving away from that expert model, as I shared earlier, into more of a collaborative engagement on how do you solve these very hard, heavy problems, as well as the ones that you would seem are pretty simple, like the landowner disputes. But do you get involved in those or do you not? And I tend, everything boils up at some point and they have to be addressed. So, as you well remember, I would guess. Yeah. Anybody else? Fantastic. I'm sorry I went about 7 minutes short. I really appreciate the invite for sure, and for the folks that are here today and on the YouTube channel for sharing some of your time with me. I hope that you found some of this to be valuable. I also encourage you to, again, say it one more time, if you're looking for answers to questions or you just want to talk, feel free to reach out to me. If I don't have your answer, I definitely do a warm handoff to someone within the agency that does, so that you can get the right information to make your own decisions. And hopefully I see you all at some point over time in my career across the table as we're getting together with the public or resource experts to talk about how to solve some of these issues. So with that, I thank you so much and appreciate you, again, coming out to hear what I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. We're